it's going to sound really, really silly, but when you're in an abusive relationship, it doesn't seem like you're in an abusive relationship, even though you know that you're being abused, because the person that you're with isn't an abusive person. They're a lovely person, because when you met them, they were kind and generous and loving and, you know, the ideal person. Otherwise you would never go out with them in the first place. So you're kind of always holding on to that person. So you're expecting that person to come back, and you believe when they're saying to you, oh, I only did that, or because I was in a bad mood, or I was stressed out, or it was your fault, because you think, well, you know, he must be telling the truth, because, you know, he's not really like that. He's a lovely person, really deep down. A lot of the signs actually stood out to me in hindsight, but actually whilst I was initially dating that person and then in a relationship with an abusive partner, the signs weren't very obvious. But little things like the way that they will refer to their ex-partners as being bitches, painting the picture like they were the victim in the relationship. You know, or, you know, they usually say things like, oh, the reason why our relationship didn't work before was because she did this and she did that and she was like this and she was like that. Also, just the way they generally tend to treat other people as well. Both my abusive partners were very rude and abusive towards other people, but used to insinuate that the only reason why they were being like that was because they were being protective over you, but actually they were just being rude. There were so many times when I had left because, not because of the abuse, but because I believed at that time that we just weren't getting on and that we didn't have enough in common, or that I was inferior or I wasn't good enough for him because I kept on bringing out the worst in him. And then I would leave for maybe like a couple of days or something like that if I could get away before he'd come running back and be like, oh, you know, sorry, etc. I was just physically and emotionally exhausted. I just couldn't handle it anymore. And I just kind of felt like, do I want the rest of my life to be like this? You know, I do want that, you know, that normal relationship. I do want to have a partnership, and not where I'm constantly the one that's in the wrong. I'm constantly, you know, the one that's always being hit on and beaten up and abused. And although he was never abusive, when our child was around, or so our child could actually see, I don't know, something inside me just knew that it wasn't right, that something was wrong. And the violence just got from bad to worse. Like, it got really, really intense, and he got more and more physical. Whereas before, he would have, you know, abused me verbally and called me a few names for like a couple of hours, and then go out and go missing for days or whatever, and then maybe come back and then be physically abusive. It would not be any arguments. It would just be, I'd get a smack or a punch or a hit or something. And at one point I remember my first partner saying to me, it doesn't matter what he does to me or how many times he cheats on me, or we have, you know, physical fights where he hits me or punches me, I must always take him back because we have a child together and I owe it to my child. But it was a process. It took a long time to actually leave. So when I say that I left him, it was in my head, the relationship was over, but I couldn't physically leave without anyone knowing that I could go somewhere safe. It is physically and emotionally exhausting. It's like constantly revising for an exam and you don't know what the subject is. Do you know what I mean? It's like that constant stress, because it doesn't matter what you say or what you do, it's going to be wrong. So even if you're happy and, you know, and there isn't any kind of, he's not upset about anything, you just don't know when he's going to ask you that question. Or, you know, you could be watching something as simple as watching, you know, EastEnders, and you could say something like, oh, I don't really know the actors in EastEnders, but like, you know, that guy's an idiot, you know, why is he, you know, doing that? And then it would turn into this whole big thing, you know, about why, you know, you're an idiot and why, you know, you shouldn't have said that and why you're just a slapper like Stacey or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It was turned to this whole big thing just from saying, you know, oh, that guy's an idiot. Why did he, you know, leave his keys on the side of the pub or whatever the situation might be. Do you know what I mean? Something as trivial as that, you know, or you could just come in and sit down and with a cup of tea or something, and then before you know it, the tea's all over you, and you know, the house is, you know, the living room's a mess as a tip because he's just upset about something that's happened and that you don't necessarily know anything about, has nothing to do with you. It's really unnerving and really unsettling. You just don't know what is going to trigger abusive behaviour, you know. And everything was a verbal confrontation. Everything. It's really difficult because you just feel exhausted. You just feel physically exhausted all the time. And I don't know whether a lot of that reason why you don't leave earlier is because you're so tired and you just want a quiet life, and you know that if you say you're going to leave, it's going to cause another argument, and you're going to be accused of attention seeking or something else. Who knows? But it's just constantly throughout the day and night sometimes, just constant, unprovoked, malicious behaviour. You know, why did I stay? Like, it doesn't make any sense. You know, I'll actually tell you what happened. Just a normal day. It was really lovely. We got some takeaway. I was studying at the time. And he said, oh, you know, put your books down. Let's watch a movie. And I remember it was Pulp Fiction. And I was trying to remember what happened between us watching the movie and eating and then him becoming abusive. And then I think I'd fallen asleep. And he woke me up by throwing the water in my face. And so I woke up, I was like, oh my gosh, you know, he said, oh, why are you sleeping? I want you to stay awake with me. I said, yeah, but I'm tired, you know, kind of thing. And I remember he was sat down, and what's funny is it didn't really click to me at the time, but he was sat down on like the edge of the sofa saying, oh, wake up, with a bottle of water. He put a bottle of water, and he had like a flip knife, like a flip blade in his hand. The blade was quite thick and it was sharp, and I remember he was sat down and he kept on, throughout the movie, he kept on flicking this knife out. Anyway, so he woke me up by throwing this water on my face and was saying to me that he wanted me to stay awake with him. And I was saying to him, well, yeah, you know, but I'm really, really tired. And he was sat on the end of the bed and he was flicking this knife. And I'd kind of like come to, kind of thing, soaking wet. And I was saying, well, why did you do that? And he was saying, I want you to stay awake with me. And I remember he was saying, oh, look, I can do it now, kind of thing. And he was showing me flicking the blade. And I was saying to him, well, why are you playing with it anyway? Why do you even care? And he started like waving the knife kind of like around in my face and, you know, like playing, you know, with the knife in me. I was saying, stop it, you know, I don't like it, or whatever. And then he kept on pretending to cut me with the knife across my hand. And I remember saying to him, stop it, you know, you're being silly, stop messing around, I don't think it's funny. And then I just remember him grabbing me like by like this cuff of my clothes, and he was holding me and like shaking me, and he kept on pouring water in my face. And I was like gasping for air, you know, because I couldn't breathe, obviously. And then he'd start, make me catch my breath, and then throw water over my face again. And it felt like it went on for an eternity. And I remember him laughing, and just laughing and laughing. And I remember I started crying. And he was saying, oh, see, you're being silly, you know, I'm only playing with you, you're so weak, you haven't got a sense of humour, blah, 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 typical woman, and all this degrading stuff. And I remember at the end of it feeling frightened, but also really, really guilty, because he was just trying to play with me, and I was just being oversensitive, and I didn't get his joke, you know. And I just think, how on earth can somebody in their right mind stay with somebody? I think the worst part of it was the emotional abuse, and because I feel like I never really had a lot of self-esteem anyway as a child, or as a young person, and I think that he probably saw that in me and saw that that was a good thing for him, because he could then take advantage of it. But for somebody that's already got that already has low self-esteem, and that's already a doubt in their abilities, and that's already feeling very insecure, to then have somebody constantly telling you that, you know, you're not good enough, that you're ugly, you're fat, you're too skinny. I think that if they just came out and was just abusive, physically, then you'd walk away. So I think that planting the seed in that verbal abuse and those mind games, and I think that's laying the foundation for them to then keep you when they start the physical abuse, because, you know, they were a nice guy when you met them. You've met this person that's lovely and wonderful, really great guy, everybody loves them, you know, after you've fallen in love with them and you feel secure in it, you feel in a secure place with them, then to becoming physically abusive, and they claim that they've never been abusive before until they've met you, then you obviously think there's something wrong with you, because this is a nice guy. I remember at the beginning of the relationship when they were like this, you know. When the abuse starts to happen, they don't seem to be as loving as they were before. You start to notice there's a pattern emerging, and the first thing you do is you go to your friends and say, oh yeah, you know, he doesn't treat me right, or etc, etc. And people tend to be like, well, he's an alright guy, you know. It is what he's saying, and he's just going through, you know, a bad time, or he's just, you know, was stressed out that day. So then people are telling, or are then reinforcing things that he's already telling you. So you're thinking, yeah, well, okay, maybe I should just kind of stick it out and see, you know, be more patient with him, and, you know, all those same things that women tell each other all the time, you know. Oh, well, you know, he's just not in touch with his feelings, he's not or he's so sensitive, he doesn't know how to, you know, handle you because you're so assertive, or all those things that girls say, oh, he really likes you, that's why he's so horrible to you sometimes. All that crap, do you know what I mean? It's crap, that's what it is. All those things that people tell you when you're younger, you know, when a boy pushes you or pulls your hair or whatever. So, yeah, he's only horrible to you because he likes you. That's a lie. He's horrible to you because he doesn't like you. Do you know what I mean, you know? So with regards to, like, being in a relationship and telling people what's going on, all you hear is excuses. And with my second relationship, and I do kick myself about it sometimes, and actually my New Year's resolution this year was to trust my instincts more, because initially at the beginning of the relationship, he was lovely, and then he would start doing this. It was the same pattern emerging where he'd nitpick at things and blow all out of proportion, and then try and blame me for things. And I remember saying to my friends, oh, you know, oh, he reminds me so much of my other partner, and we're like, no, but they're completely two different people. And I was like, yeah, but something isn't right, you know. It panned out exactly the same way. When you're in an abusive relationship, you don't realise it's an abusive relationship because the person that you're with isn't an abusive person. They don't fit that stereotype of being an alcoholic, or a drug addict, or, you know, some kind of muscle-bound criminal with lots of tattoos and really, you know, down the pub and really aggressive, and do you know what I mean? That's not what an abusive person, I'm not saying those people like that can't be abusive, but that's not what an abusive person is. An abusive person is a really nice guy. Really, really nice guy, you know, and as soon as he's got you wrapped around his little finger, or so he thinks, then he'll start using tactics to kind of, you know, take away your self-esteem. Violence towards anybody or for any reason is not a valued way to kind of deal with situations, you know. It doesn't matter how angry you are. I kind of realised that every single relationship that I've had, whether it be with, you know, a friend or a boyfriend, or, you know, male or female, whatever, work colleague, managers, they've all been really abusive. And I've kind of felt, you know, I need to stop being a doormat. I need to start sticking up for myself and realising that actually by saying to somebody no, or walking away from something because you're not happy with it, is not being rude. You need to leave. You need to leave. You have to leave today, but you have to leave. You can't stay in that relationship, especially if you've got children as well, because it's unfair to your children, it's unfair to you. It's unfair to him as well, actually, to be honest, because, you know, by you staying with him, you're not doing him any favours. You're just allowing that kind of behaviour to continue.